just why we're doing the program, what some of the background is, and then turn it over to RJ for the rest. So the reason we started this, okay, let me go back here. So the reason that we launched our on-farm trial program is really recognizing the fact that there's a tremendous degree of innovation going on in the ag space, and a lot of really innovative companies that are working on solving some of the core problems that farmers face in very different ways, right? So while today, synthetically produced pesticides, synthetically produced fertilizers, genetically modified traits, right? These are really the bread and butter of how we solve some of these problems today. There's a lot of really interesting technology and innovative companies working on solving these same problems, but through new mechanisms, be these biologically based crop inputs, equipment and robotics that are delivering crop protection in different ways, robotics and new approaches to seed trait development that share a lot of the same goals as the technology that we use today, but are tackling these problems with very different technology. The biological space is especially one that there's just a tremendous degree of interest and innovation right now. If you look at where investment in new startups is going, which is something that we're always tracking, right? Almost all of this is going to companies that are working on alternatives to traditional crop inputs. That investment has doubled in the past year, and the farmer demand for these products is growing much, much faster than any other sector of the ag input space. There's a lot of reasons that are driving this. I think part of it is just high input costs, right? We all know over the past couple of years especially, input costs have been very volatile, and in some cases, high to the level that it's causing significant threats to the profitability of farms. So ways to reduce the usage of some of these really expensive crop inputs, right? Fertilizers having supply chain disruptions with geopolitical issues, supply chain issues, finding alternatives that can mitigate some of the demand for those products is obviously something that's become top of mind. There's also scientific advances that are making development of some of these newer technologies more feasible than they were before, right? We don't just have the same technologies for discovering new products. We have new, genotyping technologies that are making it really easy to understand gene expression and the actual genetic underpinning of different phenotypes that we observe, which is again leading to new approaches to trying to solve some of these same problems. There's also environmental concerns and regulation, which is becoming more and more pressing in many parts of the world and even some parts of the US, where traditional crop inputs that have worked very well for a long time are facing increasing consumer pressure, regulatory pressure, and we might not agree with them, maybe we do, but one way or the other, it doesn't really matter. These regulations are probably going to become a more and more burdensome and larger factor going forward. So it's something that as farmers and as people working with farmers, we need to get ahead of. There's also growing resistance, right? Traditional crop protection products have been used very similarly in many cases for a very long time, and that's leading to weeds that are hard to control, insects that are developing resistance, and that combined with the fact that the pipeline of new innovations coming to market in the synthetic crop input space is pretty limited right now. There's not tons of new herbicides and insecticides being launched every year, means that we need to look at new ways to solve some of these problems. The challenge with that is that there is just almost an overwhelming number of companies that are working to develop new, for example, biological products, right? There's hundreds and hundreds of companies, and in many ways that's really exciting, right? Whereas in chemistry, in fertilizer, in genetically modified traits, right? There's really only a couple of companies globally that dominate the entire market. Right, the biological space is very, very different, right? It's highly fragmented. There's hundreds of companies globally that are developing new technology here, which is good. There's a lot of competition, there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of startup activity. But the challenge is that it's hard to know from this huge landscape of innovators which of these technologies are the most exciting and how are they going to work when we get them out into the real world, right? This is hard to know, and it's especially hard to know when there's just such a huge diversity of technologies out there. So that's really what led us to launch our field trial program. And the goal of the on-farm trial program is really to generate data on how these new technologies work in the real world with actual FBN growers so that we can really evaluate how these technologies work and ultimately commercialize them in a very data-driven way, right? As farmers, we want to be able to talk to our members and say, here is data that really supports how this product works, why it works, and has really good data and science behind it. Not just, it's a biological, it's new, you should try it, but it's actually based on really rigorous data, right? That's been a really core part of the FBN ethos since day one, is being transparent about real world product performance and pricing. And I think the biological space is one that, similar to what we've done in seed and chemistry, really needs that same approach to help these technologies scale on the market. So what we do is we partner with a lot of the leading technology developers in this space to test their technologies in field trials with FBN growers. RJ will talk a little bit more about the logistics of how these work, but what's really critical, the most important point, is that these trials are real world, right? These are not research farm trials, these are not lab studies, they're not greenhouse studies. These are actual on-farm trials with real FBN growers. The hope of that is to help these products be commercialized in a more seamless and data-driven way, which is a place that FBN can be very successful in, both partnering with technology developers and with our farmer members. Really, this is tearing down what at least personally I view as the biggest barrier to biological scaling, which is the lack of real-world data. Right, the number of technologies that we've observed that can look really promising in lab studies and greenhouse studies and small plot research farms that don't necessarily scale to the real world is quite eye-opening. There's a lot of great research that is done in small plot trials, and we're very supportive of that. Right, it has to be done in the earlier stages when you're testing multiple rates, multiple formulations, different timings. Right, we have to use small plot studies to answer some of those questions. But it's usually not enough, simply because the data from a small plot trial is really not realistic enough to tell us how a product is going to work out in a real farm, where a lot of things are different, right? The product has to be mixed with real products, it has to be applied through real grower equipment, it experiences varying soil fertility conditions, different soil types, different topographies, different genetics. It might get applied late because the field was too wet to get in with the sprayer, right? There's all these things that happen in a real farm that don't happen on a research farm that can have a big impact on product performance, which is why we think it's so critical to test these technologies in the real world where the conditions actually match the conditions where the product is going to be used. It's good to have academic data, but it's often not enough. So this past year, we've been fortunate to partner with a lot of the leading companies in the space. We've tested about 50 different products in many hundreds of trials with FBN growers. So we really appreciate the partnership we have with FBN members here, who are critical to making this program work. Right? The whole point is to get data from the real world, and FBN growers are the way that we do that. So that's a really critical part of how the program works. We've tested a really wide range of technologies really across the network and collected some really valuable data on technologies that look really promising and ones that we think maybe need a little bit more work. But regardless, we're getting the data that gives us confidence in making that decision and going to market based on really confident, transparent, real-world data. So I'm going to introduce RJ here. RJ leads the farmer-facing operations as part of our trial program. So any of you who have done trials or are considering doing them will either have worked with him or will be working with him closely. I can let him introduce himself, but he's going to talk a little bit more about the logistics of how the trials work and is definitely the person to talk to for anyone who is interested. So RJ, I'll turn it over to you, but we'll be around for questions, so appreciate the time.
All right. Thanks, Matt. So yeah, my name is RJ Krekeler. I'm the operations manager for our on-farm trial program. Really, my job is to coordinate the logistics of all the trials, recruit growers, find the right guys to do the right trials. It's really important for us to pair up the right product and the right trial to the right grower because we want the grower to have an interest in what we're doing as well. So that I'll talk a little bit about how the program works and the process. and then answer any questions you guys might have. So when we think about how you conduct a trial and what you need to do to get the most valuable data at the end of the season, we have to have a protocol that is followed by every participant in that trial for that product. The data set needs to be the same across the board. So if we're doing 10, 20, 30 trials of a particular product, if every one of them is done differently, then it really isn't valuable data to us. So we set up a protocol, and it looks a lot like this for most trials where we do replicated strips in the field. The idea with replicated strips is that every field has variability. There's good parts of the field, bad parts of the field, wet, dry. The idea is with replicated strips is to evenly distribute the variability as best as possible between the two different treatments. So instead of doing a block in one half and a block in another half, where those variables could be skewed more towards one than the other, we do replicated strips to even them out, so that where the bad parts are in the field, it's going to equally affect both treatments. So that's kind of the way we set it up. A lot of the products we test are in furrow or foliar applied. So the idea is that if it's in furrow, as your planter is going through, you'll plant a pass and then skip a pass, and then plant a pass and skip a pass, then put the different product in, and then fill in those missing passes that you skipped. Or same thing with the sprayer. You spray a pass, skip a pass, spray a pass, skip a pass, and then go back and fill in. So your application map or your planting map ends up looking a lot like the striping that we see on the field there. And then at harvest time, when you harvest the field, we put those layers together, understand which the yield data is attributed to which treatment, and then do some analysis at the end of the year. We trim out any of the parts of the field. Usually the end rows we'll trim out. If there are outliers where maybe a part of the field isn't really a representative distribution of what happened there, we'll trim that out so that we have the best possible, most fair comparison of the treatments at the end of the year. And we do all of this with yield monitors. So there's, we don't weigh anything, it's all yield monitors. So every pass across the field needs to be mapped geospatially with a monitor for it to work. And when you're working on 40 plus acre fields, we've had some fields where we've done quarter sections where it's 160 acres and you have to have yield monitor data for data that big. Can't weigh everything there. So this is kind of what I talked about a little bit and how it looks when we do it. So we look at a lot of different factors when we do these trials, and then we clean it up as much as we can. There's a human being that physically looks at every single field and all of the data for every field to make sure that we're evaluating it fairly. So it does have to be processed manually by someone that has the ability to do that. And then we add in a bunch of other data layers on top of that. So the grower is providing the planting layer, the sprayer layer, the harvest layer. We are also adding in soil maps. In some trials, we do soil sampling where we will pull in soil data. We do satellite imagery, high resolution satellite imagery that is captured daily. Sometimes you have cloud cover, but it's captured frequently, and we monitor that. And then, of course, weather as well. So all of those tools that you would normally see in your FBN account, we're bringing those in as well to understand, field by field, treatment by treatment, how all of those things affect the product. And the goal, like Matt said, is to really understand the most we can about that product at the end of the year. And then, of course, agronomic practices as well factor in. So did they have a cover crop in the field? What was their rotation? What was the crop in the previous year? Any tillage or things like that? All of those factors kind of get built in. So we have the best possible way to understand what happened in that field at the end of the year. So when we start bringing all those layers together, you can start to see some analytics that come through. And these are some pictures of what we do throughout the season, where we're measuring GDUs that are accumulating throughout the year based on the planting date, the local weather. We'll know what growth stage the crop is in at any given time. The satellite imagery, you can see some of these trials show up pretty visibly in the field, where you can see the different layers through the satellite imagery and through the yield map. And then we do some pretty in-depth analysis at the end of the year. Every grower that participates in the program gets a customized, detailed report of the trial for their farm. Some of them do multiple trials and get multiple reports, and then we compile all that data together for the company that of the product we're testing, and provide them with a kind of an overview as well. So, what's in it for the farmer to do this? There's quite a few things that provide some benefits for this program for a grower. The first, I think, is, and I'll say that most of the guys that participate in this program enjoy looking at new technologies. They want to see something new that isn't out on the market yet. And the way that we kind of position this is that it's like a pre-commercial product. They've done good small plot research, like Matt was talking about, and there's definitely promise, but we want to put it to the test in the real world and really test its viability for commercial introduction. So most of these products are all things that have not hit the market yet, and there's some appeal for sure to look at new products that aren't out there yet, get a look at what's coming down the pipeline. This group is a very progressive group of growers that really enjoy testing new things, contributing data to the network, and sharing their knowledge of what worked on their farm for others. So, that it takes a special type of person to take a risk on a new product, but the benefit is that others can learn from what you've tested. The product for the trials is supplied for free. You are compensated as well for the trial. We know that it takes a little bit of extra time to put it in. It takes effort, and of course you're sharing your data with us. So there's value to all of that. So you get the product for free. You get paid to do it. I just talked about the reports you get, and then you have a lot of support throughout the season. I'm 100% dedicated to the program, so everybody that participates in the program has my cell number. Sometimes I tend to develop good relationships with these guys too. Like, I'll send them pictures of my kids or things like that, just because we talk so much throughout the year that just naturally happens. And then every now and then I have to bother them to do what they need to do. But and then we have agronomists also on hand that help make sure things stay on track. So there's a lot in it for the grower to participate. All right, how to sign up. It's pretty easy. Everything comes through me, but I will kind of give you a rough timeline of kind of the process, how it works throughout the year. So really now through February, we are, I guess we're in the after harvest stage right now, where we're sending out the payments for the growers that participated this year. We're sending them their reports, but I'm also recruiting for next year's trials as well right now. So I will reach out to people who we've participated with in the past, or people that I think might be interested. Or if you sign up, I'll give you some information on how to sign up. I'll follow up with you as well. Once you reach out to me and we have that conversation, I really do a lot of. It's important to me to understand as much as I can about your operations, so that I can find the best trial for you that's going to provide you with the most benefit, something you're interested in, as well as like logistically it needs to work with the equipment you have and the crop conditions and things like that. Some of these products we're targeting specific geographies, so I need to make sure everything kind of fits well for everybody. So I do a lot of one-on-one consultation as we find the right people. After we get you signed up, get a trial assigned to you, get a contract signed to do that trial, we coordinate the shipment. The product that you're testing is shipped directly to you, and then we just make sure that we have a good game plan going into the spring. Usually a lot of these are applied at planting or shortly after planting. So, knowing what you need to do and when you need to do it is pretty important. So we put a good game plan together. Which field are you going to put it in? How are you going to orient the trial within the field so that we get the best data? All of those things we talk through. During the growing season, that's when you guys are doing all the work. So I'm just there to make sure that you're staying on track, that you're getting the data right, that everything is going in correctly. So I'm very supportive during that time, but also I send a lot of text messages out, just, hey, make sure you're doing this. It looks like you're probably getting close to planting. Make sure you do this right, and let me know if you have any questions. So a lot of support during the growing season. We do collect data throughout the year. So if you have something that was applied at planting, we want to get that planting data in as soon as possible. Same thing with sprayer data and harvest data, collecting it. We might do soil sampling during the growing season, tissue sampling, it just depends on the trial. So all of that stuff happens during the growing season, and then we've completed the circle again. So that's like how the year usually works. To sign up, you just go to fbn.com/IRL, and then you click the register your farm button, and that will ask you a few questions. It's a pretty quick survey to fill out, but it really gives me the information I need to try to find the right trial for you. So it'll ask you which crops you grow, where are you located, what type of equipment are you using? Do you have in-furrow capabilities on your planter? Do you do your own spraying? Do you use yield monitors on all of those passes? It's a pretty simple questionnaire, but it really helps me to understand, okay, I'm not going to call you, if you're a corn and soybean grower in Nebraska, I'm not going to call you about a rice trial that we're doing in Arkansas. So then you fill that out, that comes directly to me, and then I'll be in touch shortly thereafter. So this is a picture of me from a long time ago, probably 7 years ago, I don't know. I didn't have a beard and I had more hair on the top of my head, but I need to update that probably at some point. But that's my cell number. That's my email address. So you can contact me anytime, send me an email, call me, text me. Happy to answer any questions you guys have, and then let you know what we have available for the program. So that's pretty much it for our part. I would love to answer any questions you guys have about the program. There are quite a few people who are in the program this year who are at the conference. I've connected with a lot of them. A lot of times it was the first time meeting them in person, so that was fun. But if there's any questions, then please let me know. Any brave brave volunteers yet? Yes, and hold on, we're going to get a microphone to you so that the recording can hear it.
RJ Pete Zimmerman from Minnesota. I don't know that I necessarily have a question, but for the people in the room that are thinking about it, I did a couple of these trials, for a corn trial and a soybean trial in 2022. They're pretty painless as long as you have the resources on your farm to be able to do it. And if you don't, then you probably won't be doing the trial. But if you are thinking about doing it, I think it is a good program, and I would encourage you to get your feet wet and at least try it. You have a lot to gain knowledge-wise, and it's a win-win, I think, for everybody involved.
Yep. Thank you, Pete. So Pete is a guy that I'm seeing for the first time, but we've talked and texted many times. So nice to see you in person. I'll connect with you after. But yeah, and we had a panel yesterday as well with some growers that participated, and that's the common feedback we get, is that we try to make it as easy and seamless as possible to do this, and I really put a lot of effort into making sure that you get more than just a check and some data out of it. Like, I really want to find something that interests you and that you have where you can learn something from it. So hopefully that makes a difference in it, but that's kind of the point of what we're doing. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I saw some of you snap some pictures of the contact information and the website. So we'll have plenty of time here afterward too, if you have any questions to just one-on-one to ask me about. But thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for coming to Farmer to Farmer this week. It's one of my favorite conferences and places to meet people. So we appreciate it. Thank you very much.